Welcome to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast where we discuss tips, tricks, and current topics related to all things in the blind and partially sighted community. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the founder of Blind Beginnings and your host, Shawn Mundell, and whatever co-host is on this week. Now, here's your host, Shawn.
I'm Shawn Mundell, and you're listening to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast. And my co-host today is Owen. Welcome, Owen.
Hello. It's great to be here on the very special podcast. I'm super excited, as this week we have a fantastic guest. His name is Sky Mundell, and he is going to be teaching us about, well, actually what he does is teaching. And so, Sky, tell us a little bit about what you teach.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. So I am basically an assistive technology trainer and specialist. I work for an organization in Canada called the Pacific Training Center for the Blind. And what we are is we are an organization in Canada, in Victoria. We teach blind students Braille, adaptive technology, cane travel, and cooking. And all of the staff are either blind or low vision. But one of the things that we do is when we teach students with low vision, or if there's, is we put lemon shades on the student, basically, so that they can learn what it's going to be like to be blind. So we don't just use low vision solutions, it's all blindness.
And do you have any vision yourself, Sky?
No, I'm actually totally blind. I was born premature in Nanaimo, British Columbia Hospital, where Diana Crowd, a famous jazz singer and piano player, was born. And I have a hearing loss. It's mild to moderate in one ear and moderate to severe in the other ear. I am a blind jazz musician, and I also have a recording studio as well.
Oh, wow. I knew you were a musician, but I didn't know that so do you have like recordings, like CDs that you've put out?
They're mostly just recordings that I've done for family. I've never gone commercial or anything. It's just private, basically.
Okay, awesome. I was going to ask you about that a little bit later, but since you brought it up, you have done some performances though, right?
That's right. I won a talent competition in 2011 called Vancouver Island's Got Talent, and was invited to go to Las Vegas down in Nevada and play at Planet Hollywood.
Wow, really?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if I missed this or not, but what is it that you play? What instruments?
Piano.
You do play piano.
Yeah.
You play anything else alongside piano or just piano?
Just piano. I'm also singing as well, so I'm a bit of a singer as well.
I have heard you play piano and you're amazingly talented, but wait a minute, I want to go back to Vegas because I love Vegas. What did you think of Vegas?
Wow, it was a really good state. Pretty busy. Lots of hotels, restaurants, and things to do.
How many people were in your, like, when you performed? Do you know roughly how many people you're performing for?
Well, there was quite a bit. I don't know. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, so I don't know.
Okay. Was it scary?
No, it was not scary at all.
Sky apparently doesn't suffer from stage fright. He's got all that confidence right there.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
You're right.
I think I would be terrified.
No, I don't suffer from stage fright. You're totally right about that.
So, okay, let's get back to your job.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your expertise? You mentioned cooking and Braille and technology and mobility. What do you teach?
Okay, so I am the Adaptive Technology Specialist at Pacific Training Center for the Blind. So what that means is I train students on a variety of different devices. That would be an iPhone with VoiceOver, a computer with Jazz and NVDA and all that stuff. And I also evaluate new texts for students that I'd never tried before that I think could really benefit my students as well.
What is some of your favorite technology personally?
Well, I like the iPhone, which I use, the iPhone is sort of my communications device. I can basically talk with people on the phone. I can send text messages and play music, listen to music, and just do a lot of things with the iPhone. That's what I use when I'm on the go and when I'm traveling. And I have a Bluetooth device so I can hook it up into my hearing aids and be able to hear my phone directly through my hearing aids.
Oh, that's good.
But when it comes to working on my primary tool at home and when I'm in my trailer in Parksville is the computer. And the reason for that is I do a lot of work on the computer, and so I need to be able to do a lot of reports and stuff. And I also play audio games on the computer as well.
So I want to go a little bit deeper here just in case somebody's learning and wants to know. How do you control your iPhone? How do you open apps? How do you get to the music you want to listen to? How do you download stuff? Tell us a bit about how that works, because personally, I think it's really cool.
Sure. So basically, the iPhone has a built-in screen reader called VoiceOver. And VoiceOver is the screen reader that enables you to use your iPhone as a blind user, and you can it basically reads the screen. So it's kind of like your eyes. It's kind of like a human narrator, but it's synthetic voice. And you can basically, in the way that you use the voice of a screen reader is you basically use gestures. And the gestures are flick left for reading back, flick right for going down, and double tap for opening up apps on the iPhone. Plus, I can also use Siri, which is the built-in dictation. Between Siri and VoiceOver, and I can pretty much download books and download apps and a whole bunch of other things.
And speaking of books, you also like listening to books as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm listening to a book right now, and about the producer who produced the Beatles, named Sir George Martin.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and it's a very good story.
So I know we're jumping around here, but I just want to go back to your job for a sec and ask you what the coolest piece of, like, the most unique piece of technology is that you've ever taught, that maybe you didn't even know about it and had to learn it, or had to teach it to somebody else, or they wanted to learn more about it.
I haven't really done much of that. I mean, there's certain technologies in my younger years that just blew my mind.
Right, because now we've come so far that most stuff that's out right now is out, but in the earlier 2000s, everything was still developing, right?
That's right. That's right. For instance, in the early 2000s, you didn't have the iPhone. You probably had a cell phone that had Talks, which was the screen reader that you could download. and buy and put onto your Nokia phone.
Now, was it only
Yeah.
Nokia phones that had it, or could you put it on almost any phone at that time?
No, it was just a Nokia phone.
So you had to get a Nokia. This is rough, ladies and gentlemen. This is really rough. This is what. This is the dark ages of technology here.
That was my reality. Totally. And it was actually, my purse was stolen and I lost my Nokia phone.
Oh no.
And it's not like you can just go to the store and buy another one and get like, it wasn't an easy thing. And that's when I got my first iPhone, and so much easier.
Having a full touchscreen, even with a full touchscreen and not physical buttons, it's still way better.
I mourn the loss of the buttons, but the fact that I could just go to the mall and buy a phone and it would talk off the shelf was like life-changing. So in that way, it was much easier. And the touchscreen was a bit of a adjustment to learn. I don't know, Sky, did you find
the
that?
Touchscreen, the touchscreen was a bit of an adjustment to learn. But interestingly, when I first started learning the iPhone, I just learned the touchscreen in a couple of days. But I will tell you that when I teach students, I depending on the capacity of a student, I may have to spend a bit of time in order to get the touchscreen to work.
Those gestures takes some getting used to, for sure.
Yeah.
On a rainy day, if you're ever bored, you can go into the Apple store and you activate voiceover on all the iPhones in the store. Then you watch the employees scramble to try and turn it off and not know how.
Oh boy.
I haven't encountered that before.
We're not recommending anybody does that, by the way.
Yeah, no, we're not recommending anybody does that.
No, I wouldn't.
And in fact, nobody here has probably ever done that, right, Owen?
Not me. Not for me.
So, Sky, have there been any challenges at your job? Anything you found challenging?
Well, there's been quite a bit of some of it. There has been a bit of challenge in moments. One challenge is trying to teach the iPhone right now over the phone.
Yeah.
That's been one of the challenge. And the other,
because of COVID, you can't teach them in person. Usually you guys have everybody into the office in person, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But if they don't... like if they don't already know how to use the phone, but yet you're teaching them how to use the phone while they're on the phone, I feel like that is very challenging.
Phoneception.
Exactly. And but even in person, it was still a bit of a challenge trying to get some of our it depends on the student. It's quite a challenge even for older students to pick up the iPhone as well. Because they're new to this stuff, and so it basically requires a lot of patience to basically teach someone who is older. One advice that I will give is when you're teaching someone who's older, don't solve in multiple ways, because that really stresses, it basically stresses them out. Stick to one way, and then once the student, if a student wants to learn multiple ways, then he or she should be able to do that. The way that I basically teach a student is, and this is something that I'm working on, is I try whenever possible to teach using concepts. So I try to teach, if I know concepts, I try to teach using that. Like, for example, I had a student who was learning the computer, and I was teaching her how to use the computer, and I would explain concepts. Okay, here's why so when I'd explain what the desktop was, I would explain, why do we use the desktop? And I would use examples of when the desktop could be used. And so one advice I would give is try teaching using concepts. Also, once a student has completed a lesson, make sure the instructor sends, one of the things that I do is when once I finish my lessons, is I will send lesson notes for the students so that the student remembers what to do.
Right, kind of like homework in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of like homework, and it's to reinforce what they've done.
Right, so they got to keep practicing it, right?
Yeah.
So how did this job come to be? How did you get this job, Sky?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I was actually a student at the Pacific Training Center for the Blind. And when the Pacific Training Center for the Blind first started, we first did our pilot program back in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
There was a program being ran at the time called EATI, which has since been disbanded, the Equipment and Assistive Technology Initiative. That program has since been disbanded. Well, 7 months later, I think it was in October of 2014, what happened was I hear about this program called Technology at Work. And I found out about it and wanted to know what it was, and I thought it was pretty interesting. And then they were talking about having assessors assess clients, and I figured, well, I have an idea. There are some blind people doing assessments for clients, but not so much, not a whole lot in Victoria. And so I figured, well, how might I do this? How about, since I use the technology, I will become, why don't I become an assessor who trains, who assesses and recommends and trains blind people on assistive devices. And I went to our program coordinator, and I pitched a proposal that I think it would be really neat that if they're gonna have assessors for this program, that there be someone who is blind, who knows how to use the technologies, knows the options that are available, knows its strengths and weaknesses, and can recommend for this client the right solutions for that particular client. And so the program coordinator trained me, and she trained me on the best way to help the clients. And that's how I began to take the job, was by doing a 6-month internship. I worked for Neo Squire in the Distant Computer Comfort program, teaching assistive technology. And that led into basically working for the Pacific Training Center for the Blind.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you approached them and basically gave them this, idea that they should really hire you. And they did. That's great.
Exactly.
Niche market.
Yeah. Are the majority of your students seniors then? Older people?
It really depends. We do have we have young students, but the majority of students that came to us, at least in the earlier days, were students who were seniors, who were losing their vision. We definitely have had younger students as well attend the program as well.
So a lot of them, though, were sighted and then lost their vision?
Exactly.
Right. So I'm just curious, if somebody had used an iPhone before, for example, is it easier for them to then learn voiceover, or is it more confusing?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think we actually have had students that have used an iPhone being sighted and then went totally blind. I think a lot of them, they might have used, a flip phone or something when they were sighted, and then got the iPhone when they were totally blind. I don't think we've ever had a student yet who, who had an iPhone first being sighted, and then continued using it after losing sight.
because I have a visual impairment and have been around many voiceover users, I was thinking, like, if I was to, like, have had used a phone with a touchscreen and then went, say, blind tomorrow, I think I'd be able to figure it out very quickly. And I don't know if that's just because I'm a technology kind of person, or if it's because I've maybe seen the way you guys use it.
Yeah,
and I just have learned off of that myself.
Yeah, I think it would
because if a phone is using voiceover and the screen is black, I can still control it because I've just kind of seen the way it's done. So I don't know if I had never seen it before and went blind tomorrow, maybe I'd have troubles grasping some of the concepts, but would pick it up eventually.
Yeah.
We could have Sky try to teach you how to do something using voiceover right now.
Yeah. The only problem is I'm on an Android.
You're an Android guy.
So that was actually going to be one of my questions. And it was going to be iPhone or Android, Sky, and why?
Well, I would love to definitely learn about Android. But I think part of the reason why iPhone is so popular, and this is not to say anything negative about Android, but this is my opinion, is because Apple has a really good market share when it comes to smartphones. The iPhone pretty much dominates the mobile market for smartphones. Now, that doesn't mean that Android does not have any users. And so there are users out there, and there definitely are, who use Android. It just means that the iPhone, when you look at the Android and iPhone, the iPhone really is popular among the blindness community.
Have you played around with the Android at all, Sky?
I tried. I've only used it briefly, and I have a couple of friends that do, but I've never really gotten. See, what I do is when I get a piece of particular technology, is I will actually go in, and this is something that I do as an assessor, is I will actually go in and I will spend a few days with that product, and I will really try the product. Get to know it, get to know its functionality, and just seeing what strengths it has and which weaknesses it has.
So you haven't had a chance to spend a lot of time with an Android then?
Not yet, but that's one of the things I'd like to do, because if we have someone that uses Android, it might be a good idea for me to have a grasp on Android.
I was really hoping that Clement was going to be in this call. I completely forgot to ask him, but I wanted to have because Clement has a Samsung right now, and I was really wanting them to do a little segment of like a duel, kind of like a little war, like this is why I like iPhone and this is why I like Android. But what I can say, and I want to add on to what Sky said, is Apple really strived to have really good accessibility. Like, they wanted their stuff to be available to all users, and the accessibility on the iPhone and on the Mac, at least in the early 2010s / late 2000s, was very good. VoiceOver on the Mac was much easier to use than, for example, JAWS was at the time. And Androids didn't really have much accessibility as far as VoiceOver, or what Google calls TalkBack is the same thing. And it wasn't as seamless. It didn't work as smoothly. The gestures weren't quite as nice. Now, I know you mentioned NVDA earlier on Windows. I've heard that that's a really good software to use, and is it free? Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, it's a screen reader for the computer that is completely free, and NVDA is available on Windows and on Android for anybody that wants to maybe even give Android a shot at some point, if they wanted to try something new. I know there's people out there that just want to do it, change it up. Why not?
Yeah, and also as well, I've also been looking at the new Microsoft Narrator. That was a piece of junk in the early 2000s, but now Narrator has grown into a very mature capable screen reader. And it's built in on Windows.
Yeah. Now that's something else I wanted to bring up too. Is on the Mac VoiceOver, it's kind of gone backwards. It's as if they stopped updating it. Is that right? Like it's not as good as it used to be, or it's like they stopped adding new features to it.
Well, I wouldn't say that. Basically, I think part of the reason why Apple made it so accessible was because they had a CEO in the 2000s, early to mid 2000s, named
Steve Jobs, right?
Jobs. And what happened was he was very strict on making it accessible. He wouldn't let you get away with anything. He was very strict. But then, unfortunately, he died in 2011. So they got in a new guy named Tim Cook. And what seems to be happening, at least on the Mac side, is that the accessibility of VoiceOver seems to be stagnating a little bit. And I use Mac for audio production, and I do use email and internet, and that works fine with VoiceOver. But there's some shortcomings in regards to doing word processing, like spell check. Spell check does work to a point, but not as good. This isn't to criticize anybody using a Mac, but I think Macintosh accessibility could use a little bit of work, and I have no doubt that if Steve Jobs was still around, I think the Mac operating system would have been a lot more, would have had a lot more accessibility, as in a lot more accessibility, and I think VoiceOver would have been way ahead, and it probably would have been used a lot more on the Mac and stuff.
I completely agree with you there. See, it seems like things started to go downhill when Steve Jobs passed away, because he was the one that came up with all these creative ideas for new things to try and to keep it pushing forward, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's rare to meet somebody who uses JAWS, NVDA, and VoiceOver, and, like, on a Mac and a PC. What do you prefer? What's the best one?
Well, it really depends on what you want to do. Each screen reader has its own strengths and weaknesses. Like there are times where if you go into government offices, JAWS is probably what you're going to be using, because a lot of the stuff that the government has is proprietary, and they've written scripts for JAWS. Now, that doesn't mean that, there are folks in the workplaces who use NVDA, and I definitely know folks that do use NVDA and VoiceOver on the Mac. But when it comes to certain jobs like government jobs, JAWS is what is used because of the ability to script. Plus, one of the tools that I use quite a bit when it comes to using JAWS, which I find really helpful, and this could be something that could be added into other products like NVDA, Narrator, VoiceOver, is Text Analyzer, which allows you to proofread a document. You can basically press a key, and you can basically proofread document and find inconsistencies like space runs and unspaced punctuations and a whole bunch of other things. And that's a tool that a lot of people, especially who do writing, use. And I use that too when it comes to writing my documents. I always use JAWS and Word when it comes to writing, especially emails, because I want to make sure that my emails are pretty good. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that NVDA and the others are bad. It just means that they haven't, at the moment, Text Analyzer has not made it into any other screen reader as well. It's only JAWS that uses that tool.
Okay, a plug for JAWS then. I use JAWS. I support that.
Exactly.
I've been nervous to do NVDA because I feel like I don't know. What I've been told or what I've learned is that NVDA is good if you are really techie and you want to create your own scripts and make it it might be able to do special things if you know how to do that, but I don't. So I'd rather go with JAWS and know that the majority of blind people out there probably can help me when I get stuck. So
you don't have to create scripts using NVDA. It does work out of the box.
Right, but you can kind of personalize it a little bit more than JAWS, right?
Exactly. But one of the disadvantages of JAWS, and I hope that will change as time goes by, is the price. And
yes,
JAWS, it still continues to be expensive.
That's true. You can't beat free.
No, you can't.
Yeah. Not at the moment.
I don't have any more questions because I think we covered quite a lot of it. And we even got to sneak his music stuff in there, even though it was at the beginning.
Yeah. I'm still super impressed that you performed in Vegas. Like, how many people can say that? That's just so amazing.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's a pleasure.
So is there somewhere people can hear your music if you wanted to check you out?
If people want to find me on YouTube, it's Sky Mundell. So capital SKY space capital M as in mom, U as in unicorn, N as in November, DELL. D as in dog, E as in echo, L as in Lena, and L as in Lena.
Okay, so they can search for you. So and listen to some of your music?
Yes.
Cool. Well, I definitely recommend checking out Sky Mundell. He is very talented, and so talented that he's performed in Vegas. I just think I'm so
it's Shawn's
proud.
Lame claim to fame is what it is.
It's like I get to say that I know somebody personally who's performed in Vegas. I mean, who can say that? I love it.
I can't say that. Well, I guess I can because I know Sky as well.
You know Sky too.
I can say that. Yeah.
It's our new claim to fame. That's so cool. Thanks so much, Sky, for being with us today.
You are more than welcome. And good luck with the podcast. And I look forward to hearing some more episodes in the future.
Oh, thank you. And please continue to listen and share it with your friends.
I will.
Awesome. And thanks, Owen, for co-hosting with me today.
No problem. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Marcellet. Please join us next time.
For more information on Blind Beginnings and its mission to inspire and support children and youth who are blind or partially sighted and their families, visit www.blindbeginnings.ca.